I'm going to give you a lot of hard-hitting shit. And I'm going to give you some opinions that might hurt your feelings. They might even be wrong.
Yo, 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 and welcome back to a new season of the Nick and Griff Show. Today is Sunday, December 10th, 2023. It's 9:06 a.m. Griff, let's talk some life today. Let's talk some Bitcoin. Let's talk some economics. Let's get into what really matters.
I wanted to get right into it as well. It's like the yo, 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 yo. Welcome back to the we don't want to get fucked show anymore. We're so fucking tired, man. I'm so fucking tired. I'm so fucking tired of walking around and basically, I'm in sales. You're in sales. Have you ever been in a sales scenario where you're listening to a bunch of people talk and you're like, okay, I don't want to tell you guys that I have the gold you're looking for. I don't want to tell you guys that I have the answer you're looking for, because that's going to make me look like a charlatan, because it's going to make me look like a know-it-all. It's going to make me not look good. But It doesn't matter what scenario I sit in, whether it's with coworkers, people I'm selling to. So that's doctors, surgeons, nurses, practitioners, people, CEOs of hospitals, CFOs. It does not matter who I'm talking to. The system is broken. The system's been broken. And the funny thing is nobody will talk about the fact that there are historical points that anybody can point to. Anybody can look up at this point and read and go, yes, the system is broken. And I think a good place to start with today, because a lot of the Nick and Griff show that you guys saw the last time was us learning. All we were doing was learning. And where we are now, still learning. We're still learning, but we're a little bit less green. We've been a little bit through the Bitcoin bear. We never stopped, fellas. We never stopped.
For me, and I feel like I could probably speak for both of us in this. Whenever we were recording episodes previously, man, we really enjoyed it. We were learning a lot. We were working to understand what we really believed. And you know what? I think through this bear market, I have found some conviction. I know that you have found some conviction, and we're ready to take it to the next level and start speaking on that conviction.
Absolutely. And I think one of the biggest things is that I've taken a bigger look at world history. As I don't know if a lot of people know, Nick has found God and Jesus Christ as his Lord and Savior. Nick, I don't know how long ago would you say that you really had that conviction where you would tell everybody that very thing, that you've accepted Lord and Savior?
Well, I'd say the journey kind of started for me in 2020, the very end of 2020, whenever I came back home to Tulsa. So really whenever I started, really kind of sharing my own experience, with some more conviction was probably 2021, later 2021, was kind of when that journey was. So I spent, better part of a year and a half, something like that. And, man, now it's just gangbusters, really moving forward through it.
That's who you are.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's who you
100%.
are.
Yeah. 100%.
So the cool thing about our podcast,
king, baby.
Oh my goodness. And the cool part about that, guys, for you, Nick, across the board, there are a lot of people who believe in Jesus Christ, but there are not a lot of guys who live it and also live through the Bible and actually adhere to the principles and go live that. Now, Nick has inspired me, fellas. I am not right where he is, right? So you're going to get two different takes on world history. You're going to get two different perspectives. But that's not to say that I think he's wrong. And that's not to say that I'm still not learning in that direction as well. It's to say that we are both extremely skeptical people. So we don't just find things and go, oh, that's it. We don't just find things and go, ooh, that's it. We didn't just get on this podcast or start this podcast to talk about Bitcoin because we were like grifters, because we just wanted to talk about nothing. We wanted to give ourselves the platform to speak because we're tired. Because we were told if you made $100,000 and you could get a 401k and buy a house, you were going to be really fucking happy. And that's just a bold-faced lie. We were told that the Constitution meant something. We were told that there was a standard in this country. That was a lie. Now, I'll give it to him, Nick. I am one of the more ambivalent, ignorant people I've ever met in my life. It's like the craziest ignorant skepticism you've ever seen. Because I'll believe anything, but I'll believe nothing. I want to believe that we live in a free country. I wanted to believe that economic freedom and economic opportunity was not only equal, but if you woke up in the morning with fire in your ass, you are going to get somewhere. And that's simply not the case. It's just simply not the case anymore. And so I guess we could start this conversation in a whole bunch of different places, and we will. We'll take this thing back to when they're now finding pyramids to 25,000 BCE. We'll take it to 0. We'll take it to 100 AD. We will take it to wherever the podcast would like to go. But today, what I want to start with is this fucking loser, Jamie Dimon, and Elizabeth Warren in our government. Guys, hear me out on this. Banks are the terrorists. You're hearing a lot about Hamas. You're hearing a lot about terrorist groups, organizations, Putin attacking Ukraine. You're hearing a lot about all of this bread and circus, all of these nation states, all of these flags, all of this shit to throw at you. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything. If you look at the history of money, and you read the Bible, usury, the moment that you start attacking money with interest rates, and pause, the moment you start attaching money with interest rates, Nick, I don't know if I've ever been so excited to talk because I'm so tired, man. I'm so fucking fed up. Ever since we started attaching interest rates with money, not only is it sinful, but it is the destruction of the bourgeoisie. It is the destruction of the middle class. There is no middle class if there are interest rates. There is no middle class if they don't have the ability to save. And the cool thing about Bitcoin is the first time in human history ever that the people have been given the chance to not get debased. Is the first time in human history ever the people can take ground and can take their economic energy, their economic opportunity, and self-custody it. Nobody can go touch that. And so why is that so important to me? Well, the Constitution was written in 1776, and 15 years there later, we chartered our first national bank. We lost. Now, somewhere down the line, we had this guy called Andrew Jackson. He abolished it, and he preserved the Union, and he kind of put an end to a lot of what was going on in the South economically. Had nothing to do with race. Listen, slavery is something that happens today. All these people that want to talk about the slavery that happened in the United States, it's worse today. And you know who are the biggest advocates of slavery? We the people. We the people are the worst. We are the worst. We are the most hypocritical, honestly, self-righteous pieces of shit in this country. We don't care. We talk a big game. We talk freedom. We talk like we're doing something different than anybody's ever done it before. We're doing nothing different. Nothing. And there are now people talking with Bitcoin going, Bitcoin is the iteration of the Constitution today. It's the modern Constitution. It truly is. If you cannot sit there and read the white paper and understand how this is the new revolution, you're entirely un-American. If you think gold is our way to self-sovereignty, you are a liar because you haven't read history and you need to get out of the way. You need to do a little bit more learning.
Griff, let's break a couple of these things down. I think you've got some interesting thoughts, and I think you're sharing a lot of great conclusions that that you and I share. Let's get into maybe a little bit of how we get to some of those. You mentioned a couple of them. So let's talk about national banks, right? Central banking system.
Yes.
Let's talk about the modern slavery in terms of economics, right? And the broken money system, right? We're not talking about people being forced to physically work against their will, although it ultimately does in some abstract way become that, right? But let's talk about economic slavery. And then what was the piece that you were mentioning? You kind of started getting into kind of the degradation of human society due to kind of as a result of some of these other things. So let's talk about the central banking system. Griff, what you're talking about? Oh, we started a central bank and then we lost. That was kind of the start of the end, right? What does that mean, Griff, for somebody that doesn't know what you're talking about?
So what I'm talking about is once you start a central issuer of money, once there's a central issuer, once there's somebody who gets to determine what the policy is, once there's somebody that gets to hoard all of the gold, rather, and gets to tell everybody how much there is, and gets to therefore print money as well. Once you centralize money, you essentially take it out of the hands of the people. essentially you start giving the ability for the government to collude at the highest level with these central banks. Because there's never a point in human history where there's a central bank that does not collude with its government. There hasn't been one. There has never been one. And if there was one, we wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation. So we can take this all the way back. I think the easiest example would be to take it to the Federal Reserve System. I think that would be the easiest because it's a little bit harder to see the conclusions or draw the conclusions from like 1776 to 1850 to 1900. And I mean, draw the conclusions on a global scale, because we were doing a lot of things in America at that time that you could say we were doing it just because we needed to, because we were a small country, because we were still just getting up and going. You could say there was a need for a lot of these banks and whatnot, but the response.
Well, they did at one point. You know, banks really solved. I mean, when we talk about going from gold to the dollar, right? Because right now when we start talking about this, right? We start asking that question. Well, what is money? You know, whenever we go from a precious metal that is gold, that was once the base layer of money, and we move then to this paper money backed by gold type system, that happened because there was a real problem in terms of portability of gold, right? Gold was not a very good medium of exchange in some ways because of the inefficiencies to move it around on a larger scale, right? So once you get past kind of a small community in terms of economics goes, right, it creates more friction in the economy. And as human beings, we want to remove as much friction in every area of life, economics only being one of those.
But also think about this. The moment that you do centrally issue money, right? The moment that you put all of the money in one place, what does that do to the attack surface area of the money? What does that do to that? It makes it very, very easy to compromise. And that's why if you look at what happened at Jekyll Island with Howard Taft and even there Woodrow Wilson afterward, central banks in the meeting at Jekyll Island and the establishment of the Federal Reserve was in response to what I see as fake panic in the market. They wanted to say that ever since Abraham Lincoln established the National Currency Act without another federally chartered bank, we didn't have one, right? So like Andrew Jackson abolished it after the second nationally chartered bank was up in like 1833. And we didn't really see a National Currency Act until the Union needed to recruit money. And Abraham Lincoln was selling treasuries, but also he launched the National Currency Act in 1863. Now, we didn't have, essentially, we didn't really have another central bank until the Fed. And you could say, like, from 1863 all the way up until then was one of the greatest times in American history. I mean, ever since the moment Andrew Jackson abolished the second national bank, the moment that he said, no, we are going to preserve the Union, we are going to tax imports, we're going to tax exports, we're not going to just allow the South to dictate everything in this country through cotton. We're going to open up the market. And the moment he did that, we're talking about the gold rush. We're talking about the Industrial Revolution. We're talking about some of the greatest booms in American history. We're talking about what gave us the ability to become the largest creditor after World War I. You can't be the largest creditor in the world if you don't have a lot of products and services. Think about China now. China is in the driver's seat because they produce everything. So it's very hard for anybody to go, hey, stop slaughtering Uyghur Muslims. Stop doing that. We can't. It would blow up our financial system. It would blow it up. Now, to kind of take it on back here, right? What happens in 1900? What happens in 1897? What's happening? The invention of the light bulb, the invention of the telephone in America. What does that do to economics when you have such a great technological advancement? Great technology is deflationary. That's what one thing humans have to recognize. If you have an inflationary currency, but yet we're these unbelievably creative people, God put us here, and it doesn't seem like there's anything that we can do there doesn't seem like there's anything we cannot do here, right? And they wanted to essentially, in my opinion, take a lot of these great innovations, take a lot of these deflationary pressures that did cause recessions, the bank panics of 1900, the recession of the 1900. And they wanted to take those recessions, propagate them so that they can start to centrally issue money again, because they weren't able to do it for so long. Now, is it interesting to me, right, that, okay, you have these deflationary technologies, okay, it's hard to look up whose money was vested where at that time, who lost to Alexander Graham Bell, who lost to the commercial light bulb, who lost to these guys. I would bet, just like now, when a central bank misses or hedge funds miss, they only have to be right once. Well, I would be willing to bet that back then, when money was much harder and gold was much more prevalent, that they couldn't be wrong. Like they had to pick it right. So you could imagine that the Vanderbilts, these guys who are building infrastructure in America, well, they probably didn't like infrastructure, world-altering technology to just hit, and they weren't the ones that picked it, right? So I argue that we're missing the fact that technology has deflationary pressures that piss bankers off, because what do bankers not do? Produce fucking anything, guys. I mean, you can get mad about Bitcoin for the fact that it is just the money. I do think mining and everything is just like a whole, it does take banking to a different level, because we've never had a money or a bank or an issuer of money, even though it's not centralized. We've never had one that's actually tied to real world energy. That in and of itself is very, very cool. We've never had that. Banks produce fucking nothing. They have to bet. Banks have to gamble in order to maintain their power. They have to collude. They have to do essentially anything that is inefficient to economies. So in 1913, these guys, they established the Federal Reserve Act, I think, in 1912. And it is too coincidental for me that Archduke Ferdinand is assassinated, right? And a war between bankers, between the Ottomans, between the Germans, between the British Empire, just has to happen, right? Just has to happen. And it just has to coincide with the fact that America all of a sudden needs to start issuing as many fucking treasury bonds. They need to start recruiting as much money as they can to help their boys over in England. I mean, it doesn't even make any sense to me that we ignore the fact that America took World War I as its initial opportunity to go from a debtor to a creditor. They took that opportunity. We took that opportunity. And we allowed a lot of things to happen. We allowed the biggest players in our industry in Jekyll Island. They covered this up, Nick. I mean, I think I was telling it to you today, or I was watching another great video. I watched so many videos about Jekyll Island, and I'm a terrible reader. Just for everybody that knows this, I'm not a good reader. It's something that I desperately not only want to do, but want to work on. I'm just not good at it. I think that's a product of, I don't know, everything in our education system. I just never wanted to read. I do very well. I do watch a lot of videos. I listen to audiobooks. I can watch and learn that way. But so I fault myself. I haven't read the book of Jekyll Island. I'm not going to sit here and lie. I've just watched a lot about it. I've watched a lot of people talk about it. And they covered this shit up, Nick. They covered it up. But let's just get a look of the attendees at Jekyll Island. Yes, Henry P. Davidson, senior partner of J.P. Morgan. Charles Norton, president of Morgan-denominated First National Bank of New York. Benjamin Strong, vice president of Morgan-denominated Bankers Trust of New York. Paul Warburg, representative of Wells Fargo. Frank Vanderlip, president of Rockefeller-dominated National Bank of New York. Senator Nelson Aldrich, the guy who really pervaded. I mean, this was his plan. Close ally and friends of Rockefeller. A. Plant Andrew, an economist. And in 1911, the National Monetary Commission, we have, and this is a quote, and it's an issued report, January 1911. We have no provision for the consideration of cash reserves of the banks and for their mobilization and use wherever needed in times of trouble. Experience has shown that the scattered cash reserves of our banks are inadequate for purpose of assistance or defense at such times. This is propaganda, everybody. This is propaganda. This is a commission. This is, if you're a college football fan, this is a committee. This is one of the first committees to just propagate a problem that's not there so that they can take advantage of the people, so that they can tell you, guys, things aren't going well. Things are going well, and we have the answers. Do you want to know what the answers are? We need to tell you what the money is, how much money there is, when it's going to be there, what the interest rates are on it, so that you can all go live your lives. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't even remotely make any sense. And what is so interesting to me, Nick, that I draw the next conclusion is there was a fight over the Federal Reserve, a massive fight over the Federal Reserve. You have this committee, this National Monetary Commission, propagating and saying, we need this Federal Reserve. We need it so bad. We need it so bad. Give me the Federal Reserve. Oh, my God. Guess who didn't want it? The Democratic Party. The Democratic platform in 1912. We oppose the so-called Aldrich Bill of the establishment of a central bank. We believe the people of the country will be largely freed from panics by such a systematic revision of our banking laws as will render temporary relief in localities where such relief is needed, with protection from control or domination by what is known as the money trust. So this is leading right into the fact that they're propagating, right? And there's two sides to this argument. But they do establish the Federal Reserve. They win. Woodrow Wilson establishes it. They win. So the people who wanted to win. Now, what happens very, 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 very quickly, Nick, like insanely quickly, after the establishment of the Federal Reserve, World War I. And what also happens very, very quickly now that we have a central bank that definitely colluded with the government to get it done, because everybody knows what lobbyists are, man. You can make so much money in this country being what is called a lobbyist. And I'm not going to get into this rant, but inflation is a metric of inefficiency in the market. And as many people as we have in this country, if there's 350 million people, every single person that is just lazy as shit not doing something, technically, in my opinion, contributes to economic inflation. So if you have a bunch of people who are just lobbying, they contribute absolutely fucking nothing to society. But what happens right after the Federal Reserve, Nick? These funding efforts were very successful for World War I. The federal government had sold roughly $10 billion. This is in 1918, equivalent to $155 billion in 2012 dollars, and God knows how many now. What, a trillion? In war bonds and treasury certificates. So take it where you want to go there, but right after we established the Federal Reserve, isolationism is gone. America is no longer like, we just need to do us, guys. If we just do us, we'll be fine. We have everything we need here. We have oil, we have mountains. I mean, we made some of the greatest land deals in human history. We have the entire West. It's ours. We don't need to go anywhere. We don't need to do anything. We don't need to help the Rothschilds. We don't need to help the king and queen. What the fuck does that mean?
Yeah.
We left in 1770. Now we need to go raise treasuries, not only 150 years later, to go help them. No, we don't. And it's insane to me that people will not recognize that Jekyll Island, Federal Reserve, 6 years later, World War I happens, and we're giving all of this money to the King and Queen of England to fight the Germans, to fight the Ottomans. And we don't know what side is better. I mean, actually, obviously, you know what happens after that. We help them lose. Weimar Germany happens. Holocaust happens. And we got all kinds of theories for you guys on that, but that's not where we're at today. But here we are, 18, right? Not that long after we abolish national banks, Andrew Jackson does what no president has the balls to do in this country today, which is abolish central and national banking, to abolish the Federal Reserve. Do not have the balls to do it. Andrew Jackson did. And it did take a long time for them to seep back in, to ruse the people, to propagate the fact that we needed, oh my God, guys, we need a bank. We need somebody to tell us we need it. No, we don't. We never have. People are fine. People communicate economic value just fine. The market communicates it just fine. If there's any type of regulation needed, it was provided by the Constitution, and being a constitutional republic, it's the fact that your vote matters in a society like that. Your vote matters very, very little when we're raising billions of dollars for global warfare. It doesn't even mean anything anymore, guys, because all of a sudden, what are you starting to recruit in? What's the attack surface area of America at that point? America goes from, okay, you're going to have to convince all of these people to do something, to you're just going to have to convince a few, because they're the ones with all the money. They're the ones with all of the ability to advertise, propagate, do committees, hire lobbyists, do anything that they need to do to get what they need. And so go back to what you were saying, but it's just insane to me that people will not recognize. They will not recognize that this isn't even deep world history, guys. We only live for 75 to 100 years. So things to humans seem so high time preference. Everything we do is high time preference. Our lifetime's high time preference. How many people have actually had the wherewithal to go, my life really doesn't mean that much. But if I'm able to take ground now, if I'm able to teach my sons and daughters now, if I'm able to marry the right woman now, my family will benefit in 200, 300 years from now. How many families have done that? I mean, hats off to the ones that have, but they are honestly all the worst people that have ever existed in human history too. So why can't good people do that? Because we've never been able to win. We've never been able to secure the Constitution. The Constitution has been under attack since its inception. And in my opinion, You could say it got knocked down. I mean, so many different times, right? You could say that it's been killed so many times. But when it was killed was the Federal Reserve. That essentially, that was the nuke. There were a lot of bombs, but that was the nuke. And what shows you that that's the nuke? We went from America, we went from building railroads, building infrastructure, having great meetings, doing all of these things, to giving the king and queen all of our fucking money. What? That doesn't even make any sense. And they got everybody. Because why? Because Woodrow Wilson is the worst president in American history, besides potentially Joe fucking Biden. So I don't apologize. People are being idiots. Everybody who, in my opinion, I wanted to tweet it this morning, Nick. If you do not understand how important Bitcoin is to the Constitution, to American freedom, to freedom in and of itself, then you're ignoring the Constitution, you're ignoring your patriotic duty, you're ignoring who this country is, you're ignoring that we've already lost as a people. And no, we don't need guns. No, we don't need to start throwing tea off of a fucking boat. Actually, all you have to do is take your paycheck, dollar cost average it into Bitcoin, and save real money. Because you want to know what? These people do not want you to have real money. If you have real money, they lose, because there's nothing they can do to stop people with real money. Look at Joe Rogan. Look at Elon Musk. Look at the guys. Look at Alex Jones. Look at Tucker Carlson. The people who played their game long enough to get enough money to where now they have land, guns. They have the ability to buy whatever they need to avoid all of this disaster. But there's only so many great patriots that are actually speaking up and doing it. And I don't believe in a revolution where I take a gun and go hurt anybody. I don't believe in that. I believe there's a much more peaceful way to go about it. I do. But I also believe that there's a time in American history where young people need to stand up and realize that when they start a Federal Reserve and 6 years later we're giving money to the king and queen, there are daddies still, guys. There are mommy and daddy. And we started this country to get away from mommy and daddy. We started this country to literally give everybody in the world hope to go, guys, we can do this. People are free. We are free. And they destroyed that. They've destroyed that. And I'm a part of it, because I do think, like, taking this all the way back, Nick, I do think the 2020 election was stolen. I'm not a Trump guy. You know that. I think if Trump doesn't outright support Bitcoin, like I just said, I don't think he's the president that we need.
Yeah, Griff, I think something that's interesting about that is that what you're sharing are a lot of conclusions on research that you and I have done individually and together. And I think a lot of that falls on deaf ears when people don't understand the fundamentals of what this thing is, right? At the end of the day, right, there's kind of this the smoke and mirrors of this existing system, right? You're talking about the Federal Reserve System. We're talking about fractional reserve banking. We're talking about centrally controlled money. What does that really mean, right? We're talking about, we can't forget that all we're talking about is the fundamental utility of what money is. And if we don't understand what money is, what its history is, and how we interact with it today, then how can we understand the current system that we utilize for money? And how could we understand or even see if there were real problems with this existing system? Now, if we really, really, really try to simplify it down to a very base level, we're going to zoom way, way past the beginning history of money. And we're going to get into that on another episode. But let's just zoom forward, and we're going to start with gold as money, right? Gold is a hard form of money. That was a physical good that people could own. It was scarce and durable, right? That made it a great store of value. Ultimately, as a store of value, something has an opportunity to move forward and become a medium of exchange. And when it becomes a medium of exchange, then people, if more people are using that thing as a medium of exchange, then it may ultimately become a unit of account, right? And we cannot forget that underlying utility of what money is.
Once we went through our economics program at UAlbany, and I realized that everybody was an idiot, including myself, I couldn't unsee what I was seeing at that point. Like I couldn't unsee it. I couldn't unsee the Bitcoin paradigm. And that's why I say what's so cool about the Nick and Griff show is you're talking to some of the most ignorant, ambivalent human beings you've ever met in your life. Like we don't figure shit out until it's in our face a couple times. And then we go, oh, fuck. Oh, okay. But the cool thing that you guys are hearing is, like we talked about at the beginning, Nick has this extremely spiritual, religious approach and it's foundational, and he does take ground in who he is. And then you have me, this kind of like, I like all this shit, you know what I mean? And what I find a foundation in is hard work, doing the right thing. I want to make money, but I also want to give to my boys. I want to give back. I want to make it so that I can give. I'm only envious of people with money because I feel like my people deserve those same things. But the podcast is also because it's like we want to share the knowledge. Like one of the cool things that Nick has been telling me about, like as we go here, I think the relationship you're going to see between me and Nick here is I'm going to give you a lot of hard hitting shit, and I'm going to give you some opinions that might hurt your feelings. They might even be wrong. Okay, they might, but they're going to be hard hitting. They're going to be factual. They're going to be well read or well watched. And then Nick he's also well read, well watched, all of these things as well. He could give rants as well, guys, but he's going to relate it back to the Bible. He's going to relate it back to who he is, just like I'm going to relate it back to who I am. And who I am is a fuck you in your face kind of person. I'm fucking tired, man. I'm fucking tired. It doesn't make any sense. The fact that we have Twitter, the fact that we can all speak, communicate, and see everything with under what seems to be like, as long as it's within the bounds of law, say what you want. And if you're saying good things and it's who you are, that's totally fucking fine. And one of the things that since we stopped doing the last show was I've gone through a lot. Nick's gone through a lot. We've both been married. We both had a lot of ups and downs.
Congrats, Griff.
Congrats.
Hey, rings, baby. Rocking the rings today.
We've been through a lot, and actually through all of it, like Nick and I's friendship's gotten better and better and better and better. And a lot of it is because I'm sharing who I am. He's sharing who he is. And I'm accepting of the fact that a lot of the things that he's saying could be much more right foundationally than where I'm at. And as well as he's also taken so many things. Nick was an insurance dealer, guys. He was dealing whole life like 4 years ago. Now
slinging these products, baby.
And I think why that's so cool is you can only be successful like that if you listen. You might not listen well, talking about myself, but you listen. You watch, you see what is successful, you see what works. So to bring it back to our theory on these economics, why we're into Bitcoin, why we're here, right? Why are we here? We're here because we cannot unsee what we've seen. We cannot look at somebody talk about 401ks and real estate and how they want to invest their money and go, hey man, like all that shit's cool, but you can't guarantee a return. You can't guarantee money go up. You don't control that. You have no control over your life if you put it all into dollar-denominated assets. We don't believe in that. Why do we not believe in that? Take it all the way back to what we're talking about. Central issuer of money. If you have a central issuer of money, you cannot just play their game entirely. You cannot do that.
It comes down to what really is the foundation. What is the underlying foundation that this thing is built on, right? There's all these smoke and mirrors, right? These are all these things that you were talking about kind of in the beginning of the show, right? And there's so many of these things happening all around us, all these narratives being spun. But we've got to ask the question, what is the foundation? Why? Why are we doing this? Why is it that we do things this way and not another way? And you know, to your point, Griff, going back to the foundation of kind of economics and investing, savings, home economics, how I manage my income and my outflows. But then how do you do that on a business scale? And then how do you do that on a global scale? You start thinking about progress as human beings. All we're doing is alleviating friction to live the lives that we'd like to live, right? And so if we're going to talk about personal investing, right? You hear so many people talking about what you just mentioned, Griff, which is 401ks, investing in real estate. I'm buying this stock. Oh, I'm doing this thing. There's all these different things out there. But at the end of it, what do you have to do with that, right? People always talk about, I'm going to, sell these assets in retirement, and then I'm going to live on them, right? Okay, well, what do you sell those assets for? Dollars. Okay, well, what are dollars? And that's what ultimately we need to live our lives today. If we want to consume things, right? The fact of the matter is, here in America, we use dollars. Okay, so then what are these dollars then? Why are they so valuable? Then you start thinking about what is money, and you start getting into the foundation of economic value and scarcity. What creates a good store of value? What creates a good medium of exchange? What creates a good unit of account? There are answers to these questions, and we're going to continue to explore them on our Twitter page and also on this podcast. You've got audio only today, but we are going to have video back soon. We've got some guests that we're going to be working on. I'm excited about that. Griff has got the Meme Factory up and cooking, and that's exciting. So come see us on Twitter. It's at Nick and Griff Show. That's all spelled out. NYCANDGRIFFSHOW. At Nick and Griff Show on Twitter. And check us out on all the major audio platforms. Griff, what's one word that you got for the people coming up here this next week?
Inflation.
We'll see you next week. Peace.